Okay, so welcome to the real video. The start of this video wasn't a bug, and let me explain what this YouTube experiment is. Essentially, on YouTube, we get these analytics that tell us when people drop off a video, and it gives us like this percentage. What typically happens in a normal video is that most people will drop off near the start unless you have like a very good hook or something, for example. In this particular case, there's going to be some people hanging on. They're going to be like, oh, scrolling through, what is this video anyway? So they might scroll through to the beginning of the video, which is where you can see the thumbnail of me trying to talk, except it's actually silent, so they won't be able to hear anything. Hopefully that would have gotten rid of some more people. So now we're left with yourself, the very tiny, or hopefully tiny proportion of people that actually are watching this part of the video. The reason that I want to talk about this is I want to talk about two interesting mental models. And this mental model to start off with is the process of inversion. I actually learned this from two musicians that I really love, Jacob Collier and Porter Robertson, both incredible. Here is the clip of them talking about inversion and how it relates to creativity.
When I'm creating music, one of the things I like to do is I like to think, what wouldn't I do here? And then I like to do that thing. And then I like to think about how it makes me feel. And sometimes it makes me feel awful, but often it makes me feel either intrigued or positive. And so it's just something I've gotten into the habit of doing. This applies to any kind of creative endeavor, whether it's writing a script or whether it's recording a song, standing on stage, making a public speech, whether it's even about planning a lesson, anything really. You can think, well, what would be the most insensible thing to do here? It can be really liberating to let yourself go from the kind of constraints of your own judgment and expectation, and to say, okay, well then let's do the opposite thing that I would expect to do, and maybe we'll find our way back to the initial thing, which is kind of a crazy feeling.
So with inversion, it's for when you're stuck on like a really hard problem. It allows you to think in completely different ways by completely flipping the expectations of what you're supposed to think. I think there's two outcomes for this video. One is that it goes kind of viral. The other is that it completely does not get picked up by any algorithm or anything and just sort of stays hanging around in the back of my YouTube channel. In any case, I really want to know what happens. If it does go viral, that would be a problem because of the fact that I don't usually create these sorts of videos, and I still haven't figured out exactly what my channel is about. I just genuinely want to see what happens when you subvert what is supposed to happen on YouTube, just to see what the outcome is. And you'll sort of see the outcome as well. So here is another really helpful concept, I think, if you're thinking creatively and trying to think outside the box. And this is the concept of taking things to the most logical extreme that you can take them. We do this in mathematics all the time. So for example, if you want to understand what happens to the graph y equals 1 over x and how the graph changes as x gets bigger, all you have to do in your mind is be like, okay, what if x is 100? What if x is 1 million? And then you can see that it's going to be a graph that sort of goes like this. This title and thumbnail of video, well, it's like kind of clickbaity in a sense, but it's also kind of the opposite of clickbaity, because clickbaity serves some anticipation, whereas this video, well, what anticipation can you get from like a white square for the thumbnail and a dot? I was originally going to call this video "Don't Watch This Video," but that's maybe like a little bit too interesting and searchable, so I don't want to call it that. I just want to call it dot, so you can't even find this video if you search for it. Anyway, stepping outside of the meta of this video, there are very interesting, super good examples of what happens when you take things to the logical extreme. And there's something in the human brain that responds to extremes. A creator like Mr. Beast, for example, he has figured out that if you try to do the most extreme thing possible, which for example, the latest video that he published was an extreme $500,000 game of tag.
This is $500,000 in cash, and whichever one of them I tag last keeps it. 10, 9, 8, oh my God, 7.
Stuff like that. There's something in the human brain that responds to superlatives. There's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which illustrates this really interestingly. There was this science experiment. There was this bird that had to push an egg back to the nest. And for whatever reason, that's like the bird's duty, is just to push this egg back. The bird would try harder depending on how big and round the egg was. What the scientists did was they created this like really round and really huge egg. And so this bird was like trying best to like push it back into the nest. They also had this other type of bird which tends to peck their mother's beak, and then there's a red dot on the beak, but the bigger the red dot is, for some reason in that bird's mind, it also triggers them to peck even faster. So humans are a little bit like that as well. Like when we see an extreme version of something, we tend to respond to it. That is an important part of understanding human psychology, and I think it's a very interesting part, and it's very interesting for creators because it means that what is the most logical extreme of the thing that you're creating? And you could try that. I mean, you don't have to go like crazy or anything like that and sacrifice your career or dignity or anything, but I think that it's just interesting to think about because you can probably push the limits of what you're comfortable with creatively by doing that, and you can reach interesting new things and get interesting new data from doing that. So if you're stuck, try to either invert things or go to the most logical extreme of that thing. Now, there is a trap when it comes to virality and, for example, growing very quickly. And the trap is that, okay, let's say that you are a YouTuber, you have a viral video and that video has now gotten like 10 million views and it's about cooking, for example. And this is the first video or even the 10th video on your channel, but you haven't really figured out what your channel is going to be about. In that particular case, you might have heaps and heaps of people watching that video, but they come for the cooking part of the channel when actually you might want to talk about anime. As a result, these people that are interested in cooking are served impressions of your video. You know, it comes up in their feed, but they don't click on it, and that leads to a low click-through rate. As a result of that, it actually hurts your YouTube channel. Furthermore, you feel restricted in what you can make because now you're stuck in this brand or this thing that you're known for. The thing that is one of the most dangerous restrictions to creativity, perhaps, is expectation, other people's expectations. And I think if you let go of those expectations, you can actually reach new heights of creativity too. All right, this is the last point I want to make, and this is from a really interesting book that's quite well known, but there's a really interesting quote that's often misinterpreted. I can perhaps only make a ridiculous video like this because my channel is so tiny. At the moment, I have 968 subscribers. Most of the people that are watching this are either people that, you know, really like my videos for some reason, in which case thank you very much, or people that I know in real life, in which case also thank you very much. Sometimes it's funny, like sometimes people unsubscribe from this channel because I don't post stuff about Notion or technology or whatever, and you know, whenever I post sentimental stuff, then people tend to unsubscribe, interestingly. The last quote that I want to talk about is that there's this concept called beginner's mind. There's a book of the same name. A lot of people mistake this particular quote, and the quote goes, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are a few. Some people interpret this quote to mean that it's good to be an expert because you have the expertise to narrow down the possibilities of what could be happening and therefore, you know, make good decisions on things. So the real quote is from the book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and that's actually emphasizing the importance of the opposite. It's emphasizing the importance of being a beginner. The full quote that not everyone knows about is, if your mind is empty, it is always ready for anything and it is open to everything. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. This video is a bit weird. Fair enough. It's not that weird considering all the weird things in the world, but it's weird enough that I think the result of this video will be interesting. I hope you like it anyway. I think the results will be very interesting. So catch you in the next one.